everybody, welcome back. We are going to go through chapter 2 today. Well, half of chapter 2. We're going to split the chapters out into 2 different parts. So in chapter 1, in this book, Hinds Feet on High Places, we met, who's the main character? Do you remember her name? Much Afraid. And she's walking with the shepherd. And who is he? Jesus, that's right. So in this, at the end of chapter 1, they had just started heading toward the high place. And the shepherd told Much Afraid that she was going to meet 2 different companions who were going to walk along with her. And today, you're going to meet those companions. Hashtag isn't here today. She's in timeout. Have you ever been in timeout? That's where she is right now. But if you want, you can press pause. You can go and grab a drink, grab an animal or a stuffed animal, and let's get started with chapter 2, beginning the journey. Looks like a nice place to go, huh? But there's a lot of mountains. Do you like hiking? It was the early morning of a beautiful day. Most of the valley was asleep. The only sounds were the joyful laughter of the running streams and the happy little songs of birds. The dew sparkled on the grass and the flowers glowed like little jewels. Sometimes the shepherd and Much Afraid walked over patches of thousands of blossoms that looked like a carpet in a king's palace. Much Afraid looked at the shepherd. "Sometimes I have wondered about the wildflowers," she said. "It seems strange that they should grow in places like this where the goats and the cows walk all over them. They have so much beauty and sweetness to give, and hardly anyone sees them." The look the shepherd turned on her was very beautiful. "Nothing that my father and I have made is ever wasted," he said quietly, "and the wildflowers have a wonderful lesson to teach. Many people live a quiet, ordinary life. Hardly anyone even knows about them, but their hearts are like delightful gardens where the king himself walks and rejoices. Some of my servants have won great respect from other people and are famous, but always their greatest victories are like the wildflowers, those which no one knows about. Learn this lesson now down here in the valley, Much Afraid, and when you get to the steep places of the mountains, it will comfort you." Look at those beautiful pictures. See the blossoms and the bird that's coming to New Hampshire soon. Have you seen blossoms on trees? Or have you seen robins? Then the shepherd added, "Come, the birds are all singing so happily. Let's sing too." So as they walked, they sang together one of the old songs from the shepherd's great book. Just as they finished singing, they came to a place where a rushing stream poured itself across the path they were following and went tumbling down the other side. It was running so swiftly and singing so loudly that it seemed to fill the valley around them with its laughing voice. As the shepherd lifted Much Afraid across the slippery wet stones, she said to him, "I do wish I knew what it is that all the running water sings. Sometimes I lie in bed at night and listen to the little stream that runs past the cottage garden. It sounds so happy and seems to sing over and over again some lovely secret message. Tell me, shepherd, do you know what the waters sing as they hurry on their way?" The shepherd smiled, and they stood there quietly for a few minutes. Suddenly, as Much Afraid stood beside the shepherd, it seemed as though, bit by bit, the water language became clear. It is, of course, impossible to write it in water language, but this is the best I can do to translate it. The water song goes like this: "Come, oh come, let us away, lower and lower every day. From the heights we leap and flow to the valleys down below, always answering to the call, to the lowest place of all." "I don't understand," said Much Afraid after she had listened for a while. "The water seems to be singing so gladly because it is hurrying to go down into the valley, and yet you are calling me to the high places. What does it mean?" "The high places," answered the shepherd, "are the starting place. It is only up on the high places of love that anyone can receive the power to pour himself out and give to others. Much Afraid still didn't really understand, but now as she listened, she heard the wildflowers singing the same sort of song. This is the law by which we live. It is so sweet to give and give. Take one more look at those beautiful flowers. Oh, there's more on this page. How about that? After that song, it seemed to Much Afraid that all of the little birds were also singing the same kind of song. This is the joy of all winged life above. Happy it is to be able to love. I never knew before, said Much Afraid suddenly, that the valley is such a beautiful place and so full of song. The shepherd laughed. You will begin to understand many things you never dreamed of before. Come, let's keep going. Soon we will be at the foothills where the mountains began. There we will find the 2 helpers that I promised you. Much Afraid had almost forgotten the promise he had made to her that day at their meeting place. With the shepherd's strong hands helping her, she had even forgotten that she had crooked feet, and she hadn't felt weak or tired at all. Oh, if only he would take her the whole way to the mountain places himself. She turned to him hopefully. Won't you please take me all the way up? When I am with you, I am strong. I'm sure that no one else but you can get me up to the high places. He looked at her most kindly, but answered quietly, Much Afraid, I could do what you wish. I could carry you all the way instead of having you climb there. But if I did, you would never develop Hinds' feet. Do you remember what hind is? It's a deer. You would never develop Hinds' feet, become my companion, and go where I go. If you climb with the helpers I have chosen for you, even though it will seem like a very long and hard journey, I promise that you will develop Hinds' feet. Then you will be able to run and jump with me far away from your enemies. Some of them, you know, can visit the lower parts of the mountains. You will probably meet them as you begin to climb. That is why I have most carefully chosen for you 2 of the very best and strongest helpers. And as I promised you before, even though you won't see me, I will always be there. Whenever you call for help, I promise to come to you at once. You will give me a new name when I get to the top? Asked Much Afraid with a quivering voice. When the flower of love blooms in your heart, you will receive a new name, he answered softly. Remember my promise? She remembered. Was it really just yesterday when he had planted love in her heart and promised that she would be changed from Much Afraid? She looked into the eyes of the shepherd. I will trust you and do whatever you want, she said. In a very short time, they crossed a bridge at the foot of the mountains. Here, huge rocks were scattered all around, and suddenly Much Afraid saw 2 women sitting on one of the rocks by the path. They both wore veils over their faces. As the shepherd and Much Afraid came closer, the 2 stood up and bowed silently to him. Here are the 2 helpers I promised you, said the shepherd quietly. Much Afraid looked at them fearfully. They were tall and looked very strong. But why did they wear veils? Why were they hiding their faces? Why didn't they say anything? See, here they are. And there's the shepherd. Who are they? She whispered to the shepherd. Will you tell me their names? Why don't they say anything? Can't they speak? Yes, they can speak, said the shepherd very quietly. But they speak a new language, Much Afraid. It is a language of the mountains which you have not learned yet. But as you travel with them, little by little, you will learn to understand their words. They are 2 of the best teachers I have. This, he said, motioning to the first of the silent women, is Sorrow. The other is her twin sister, Suffering. Poor Much Afraid. She grew very pale and began to tremble. She felt as if she would faint and hung on tightly to the shepherd. "I can't go with them," she cried. "I can't! I can't! Oh, shepherd, why must you make Sorrow and Suffering be my helpers? Can't Joy and Peace go with me? They would make me strong and help me be happy on my journey. I never thought you would do this to me." And she burst into tears. He answered her very gently, "Will you trust me, Much Afraid? Will you go with them? Or do you want to go back to the valley, to all of your fearing relatives, to marry Craven Fear himself?" Much Afraid shook at the thought. What a terrible choice to have to make. She knew Fear very well, but Suffering and Sorrow seemed terrifying. How could she go with them? Then she looked at the shepherd and suddenly realized how very much she loved him. Even if he asked the impossible, she would do it. "Do I want to go back?" she asked. "Oh, shepherd, who would I go to? In all the world, I have no one but you. Help me to do what you ask. Help me to trust you." As he heard these words, the shepherd suddenly lifted his head and laughed. A laugh full of delight and victory. It echoed round the rocky walls, and for a moment it seemed that the mountains were laughing with him. Then he spoke. "Fear not, Much Afraid. Only believe. Go with Sorrow and Suffering. When you come to hard places, put your hands in theirs, and they will lead you exactly where I want you to go." She stepped forward, looking at the two veiled women, and said with a courage she had never felt before, "I will go with you. Please lead the way." But she could not bring herself to take their hands in hers. The shepherd laughed again. "Remember my promise to bring you to the high places and to make your feet like Hinds' feet." He handed them a sack filled with food and water for their journey. Then he jumped onto a great rock at the side of the path, and from there to another and yet to another. The shepherd went leaping up the mountains until he was out of sight. Much Afraid started out, limping toward the high places, pretending not to see the outstretched hands of her helpers, Sorrow and Suffering. Remember, we talked at the beginning that none of the characters have people names. So her two companions are Sorrow and Suffering. So here are some things to think about before we meet again tomorrow to finish up chapter 2. You and I probably feel much like Much Afraid does about sorrow and suffering. Who wants sorrow and suffering? We would much rather have joy and peace in our lives than any kind of trouble or pain. Do you know people who love the Lord but still went through lots of sadness and pain? Maybe they were very sick or someone close to them died. What kind of person are they? We have a choice to make when sorrow and suffering come our way. We can get upset and angry, or we can thank God and trust Him to take care of us. We can let the troubles in our lives be used to make our spirit man stronger. All right, I'm going to give you a sneak preview. Here's where we're starting tomorrow.